Hey, have you walked into a game store recently? Or maybe you've browsed an online shop like PlayStation Store or Steam. You might have noticed something. Yeah, for the last 5 years the price for a new, big-name video games has gone up. For years, gamers were used to paying around $60 for a brand new title. This was the standard price for a long time. It almost felt like a rule that everyone in the industry followed. But that rule is starting to change. Now, many of the most anticipated games are launching with a $70 price tag. This $10 jump has sparked a lot of discussion and debate among players all over the world. And honestly, this price increase is not just a small change, it represents a major shift in the video game industry. Gamers are asking important questions. Why is this happening now? Are the games we are getting actually worth the extra money? For a lot of people, video games are more than just a hobby. They're a primary form of entertainment. A $10 increase might not sound like much to some, but for others, it can make a big difference. It could mean buying one less game per year, or maybe waiting longer for sales. The conversation is happening everywhere, from online forums to social media, as players try to understand the reasons behind this new cost. The companies that make and sell games have their own side of the story too. They point to many factors that have made creating games more expensive than ever before. They talk about the cost of new technology and the massive teams needed to build today's stunning virtual worlds. Publishers argue that the price of games has not kept up with the rising costs of development for many years. They say this price adjustment is necessary to keep their businesses healthy and to continue delivering the high-quality experiences that players have come to expect. It's a complex issue, with strong arguments on both sides of the digital divide. So, what is the real story behind the $70 game? Is it a fair price for the incredible amount of work and artistry that goes into a modern blockbuster? Or is it a sign of corporate greed pushing prices as high as players are willing to pay? In this essay, we're going to dig into the shocking truth behind game prices. We'll explore the history of how much games have cost, what has changed in how they are made, and what this all means for you, the player. The goal is to understand the complete picture, from the developer's studio to the screen in your living room, and to see what the future might hold for the price of play. To understand where we are today, we first need to look back. The price of video games has a long and interesting history, and honestly, it hasn't always been a simple $60 standard. Back in the 1980s and 90s, during the era of the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Super Nintendo, game prices were actually quite high. When you adjust for inflation, which basically measures how the value of money changes over time, many of those classic cartridge games cost more than $70 in today's money. A new copy of The Legend of Zelda or Chrono Trigger was a significant purchase for any family, often reserved for birthdays or holidays. As technology changed, so did the prices. The move from cartridges to compact discs in the mid-90s was a huge turning point for the industry. CDs were much cheaper to produce than the complex cartridges that came before them. This change helped bring the average price of a new game down. During the era of the original PlayStation and the Sega Saturn, prices began to settle into a more familiar range. This was when the $50 price point became common for many new releases. It was a welcome change for gamers, making it easier to build a collection of games without breaking the bank. The next big shift came with the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube generation in the early 2000s. The industry continued to grow, and games became more complex. The standard price for a top-tier game slowly crept up. It moved from $50 to $60. This became the new normal with the launch of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. For over a decade, from the mid-2000s all the way through the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One generation, $60 was the price you expected to pay for a major new release. It was a remarkably stable period for game pricing, something rarely seen in other entertainment industries. This long period of price stability is what makes the recent jump to $70 feel so sudden and significant to many players. Gamers grew accustomed to that $60 price for more than 15 years. It became an anchor point in their minds. But during that same time, the cost to create games skyrocketed. Game development teams grew from dozens of people to hundreds and sometimes even thousands. The technology used to create realistic graphics and massive open worlds became incredibly advanced and expensive. The $60 price tag did not change, but the industry behind it was transforming completely. This created a tension that could not last forever. One of the biggest reasons games cost more to make today is the sheer number of people it takes to build them. If you look back at the credits for a game from the 1990s, you might see a list of just a few dozen names. A small, dedicated team could create a masterpiece like Super Metroid or Final Fantasy VI. These developers often wore many hats, handling everything from programming to art design. This smaller scale kept labor costs relatively low. Now, fast forward to the modern era of game development. The credits for an upcoming game like Grand Theft Auto 6 scroll for over 30 minutes. They list thousands of names. These are not just programmers and artists anymore. Modern game development teams include writers, animators, character modelers, environment artists, lighting specialists, sound engineers, quality assurance testers, producers, marketing staff, and so many more specialized roles. Each of these individuals brings a unique skill set that is essential for creating the complex and polished games players expect. This explosion in team size is a direct result of rising player expectations for bigger, more detailed worlds. This increase in staff has a direct and massive impact on a game's budget. Salaries are the single largest expense in game development. When a team grows from 50 people to 500 people, the cost of paying all those employees for several years of work becomes enormous. A top-tier game can easily have a development budget of over $100 million, and a significant portion of that goes directly to paying the wages of the talented people building the game. It's not just about the number of people either. The specialists required for modern games, like AI programmers and photorealistic texture artists, command high salaries due to their specific expertise and the high demand for their skills. Many of today's biggest games are global productions. The main developer might be in California, but they may work with support studios in Canada, Eastern Europe, and Asia to complete the project on time. This coordination of thousands of people across different time zones and cultures adds another layer of complexity and cost. So, while the final game might come in a single box, it is the product of a global village of creators, and funding that village is a very expensive undertaking. Another major factor driving up costs is the constant push for better graphics. Every new console generation brings a leap in graphical power, and that creates a leap in player expectations. Gamers want worlds that look more realistic. Gamers want characters that look more lifelike. Gamers want animations that are smoother than ever. In the early days, a character model might be made of just a few hundred polygons. Today, a main character can be hundreds of thousands of polygons, and ultra-detailed textures for skin, for hair, and for clothing. Creating these ultra-realistic assets is incredibly time-consuming and expensive. It requires a large team of highly skilled artists. A single character model can take an artist months to create, from the initial concept sketch to the final in-game version. The same goes for the environments. Building a single realistic building requires immense detail. Building a single realistic tree requires immense detail. Building a single realistic vehicle requires immense detail. Every surface needs a texture. Every object needs to be lit correctly, and everything must fit together seamlessly. This pursuit of realism extends beyond just what you see. It also involves how the world behaves. Modern games often feature advanced physics systems where objects react realistically to player actions. For example, creating the complex ecosystem of animals in Red Dead Redemption 2, where each species has its own behaviors and interacts with others, was a monumental task. This depth adds to immersion, but it also adds millions to the budget. Ultimately, this desire for graphical fidelity and realism creates an arms race within the industry. Each major publisher wants their next game to look more impressive than the competition's. The jump from standard definition to high definition was a huge expense. The current jump to 4K resolution is proving even more demanding. Technologies like ray tracing add further cost. This endless cycle of graphical one-upmanship is a core driver of the ballooning budgets we see today. In the video game industry, time is one of the most valuable and expensive resources. The more time it takes to make a game, the more it costs. Timeline Graphic, 1990s 1, 2 years, 2020 S 5+ years. Today it's common for a blockbuster to be in development for 4 years, 5 years, or even 6 years. Some games, like the upcoming Grand Theft Auto 6, have been in development for much longer. This extended time means studios pay large teams for much longer. A team of 500 people working on a game for 5 years is an enormous financial commitment. Designing, building, testing, polishing. Modern open-world scale means years to create the content to fill the map. Every mission, every character, every location needs careful crafting. Delays are a common and costly part of the process. It's very rare for a large-scale game to avoid at least one delay. Each pushback increases the budget. An extra 6 months can add tens of millions of dollars to the cost. Studios must keep paying employees and overhead with no game revenue. This financial pressure is immense. Publishers invest hundreds of millions into projects with no immediate return. It's a high-risk gamble. If the game is a hit, the investment pays off. If it fails, losses can be devastating for the company. That risk helps explain why publishers argue for higher price points. They need the best chance to recoup massive development costs and turn a profit when the game finally launches after 5 or more years. So, what does this new $70 price tag actually mean for you, the player? The most immediate and obvious impact is on your wallet. A $10 increase might not seem like a lot, but it adds up quickly, especially if you buy several new games a year. This price hike forces many gamers to be more selective. Instead of buying on impulse at launch, players are more likely to pause and think carefully. They might read more reviews, watch gameplay videos, and wait for community opinions before committing to a purchase. The higher price raises the stakes, making each buying decision feel much bigger than before. This change also shines a brighter spotlight on a game's value proposition. When a game costs $70, players expect a $70 experience. Expectations for quality, expectations for length, and expectations for polish. A game that is short, buggy, or lacks content will face much harsher criticism at this price. Players are less forgiving when they've spent more money. That puts extra pressure on developers to deliver a flawless launch. For gamers, it means being a more discerning consumer, weighing whether a game's promise is worth the premium on day one. The increased price is also likely to change purchasing habits. Many players may decide to simply wait. The industry follows a predictable cycle of sales. A game that launches at $70 will almost certainly drop to $50 or $40 or even less within a few months. Patience becomes a powerful tool for saving money. Furthermore, the secondary market for physical games could see a resurgence. The appeal of buying a used copy a few weeks after release becomes stronger. Players may sell or trade in games to recoup costs. This dynamic puts digital-only players at a disadvantage. Since they can't resell, the $70 purchase is a final sunk cost. The $70 price tag is not the only way the industry is adapting to rising costs. In fact, the price hike is happening alongside the explosive growth of alternative business models, most notably subscription services. Instead of buying individual games for $70 each, players can pay a monthly fee for access to a large, rotating library of hundreds of titles. This Netflix for Games model offers incredible value, especially for players who like to try many different games. Microsoft has committed to putting all of its first-party games like Starfield and the next Halo on Game Pass on the day they launch. This means subscribers do not have to pay the $70 box price to play some of the biggest games of the year. At the same time, the $70 price for a base game is often just the beginning. The industry has increasingly relied on recurrent user spending to fund ongoing development and server costs. This includes things like cosmetic microtransactions and battle passes. This creates a complex and sometimes confusing landscape for players. Some players may prefer a complete, self-contained $70 experience with no additional spending required. Others might be happy to play a free-to-play game and spend money on optional cosmetics. The rise of these different models gives players more choice, but it also requires them to be more aware of how games are trying to earn their money. The journey through the economics of video games reveals a complex picture. The recent shift to a $70 price tag is not a simple case of corporate greed but the result of a perfect storm of factors. For 15 years, prices stayed static while creation costs exploded. Teams grew from dozens to thousands. Photorealistic graphics and massive, detailed worlds demanded more time, more talent, and more money. Soaring dev costs plus inflation made $60 unsustainable. The dam finally broke. The price adjustment we see today is the result. This new reality forces everyone in gaming to adapt. For players, more considered purchases. Patience, waiting for sales, used game market, subscription services. For developers, higher expectations. For publishers, higher expectations. Immense pressure to deliver value. Games must be polished, content-rich, built to modern tech standards. The $70 game is a gamble. Bigger investment for players, bigger promise from creators, redefining the relationship between them. Looking ahead, pricing will diversify. The $70 blockbuster won't vanish, but it will sit alongside alternatives. Subscription services like Xbox Game Pass, access to hundreds for a fee, free to play with cosmetic purchases, dominating multiplayer, dynamic pricing, higher at launch, dropping over time. Fragmentation equals more choice in how players pay and access games. Ultimately, this is about value. The shock of $70 is fading, replaced by a nuanced sense of development costs. Players have more options, waiting for sales, joining subscriptions. The future is a spectrum of models for different players, and as developers keep pushing boundaries, the debate over what games are worth will stay central.